We just recently finished up a project called War Remains. We created that in partnership with Dan Carlin, who you see here. He's kind of a well-known podcaster out there. I'm sure some of you have heard his material. And if you haven't, I suggest you check it out. He's got a way of kind of grounding history, in a way that relates to a lot of people, I think. And he does these epic, 6-hour, 8-hour podcast series. And he's maybe most famous for some of his work on World War I. And so, he's been trying to figure out ways to bring that to his audience in kind of a more visceral context. And, eventually he hooked up with Madison Wells Media and Flight School Studios. And, we worked in conjunction with them to create this installation. I think I have a clip here. Just a fun little clip that Madison Wells put together to sort of give you a little bit of an idea of what we did. World War I on a whole is obviously a really intense subject to try to tackle in any medium, but I think VR perhaps gives us one of the best opportunities to try and impart at least some of the sense of horror and the scale of the conflict and the loss that people experienced. It was important to Dan that we presented an intensely realistic experience that emulated the shock one would feel if dropped directly into the trenches during one of the most violent conflicts in all of modern history. To some degree, I feel like we're still kind of in the early days of VR, and it's got an unparalleled ability to impart presence, empathy, and lasting feelings about the subject material that is presented. War Remains, I think, is a fantastic example of the kinds of projects that we should really try to feature in this medium while we still have this window of opportunity. We don't know how big this window is going to be where people really pay attention and really take things away from the experiences. But while it's there, I think we should seize that opportunity and share these kind of projects with as many people as possible. When I think about the VR experiences that I've had, I don't necessarily, my mind and my memories, I don't necessarily frame them in the same way that I frame a movie or a video game. They're much more pure memories than that. I remember the experience almost as if I was there. And even though I think we're in kind of the crude early days of VR, and I think we can all imagine where this technology is going to go. We've got like a little hot spot right now, and we need to pay attention, while we still have these audiences and try to seize the opportunity and get things like this in front of them when they're actually going to digest it in the way that we like. Our development partner, Flight School, came to their own conclusion when looking at the subject matter, and they thought that the best way to put people in a World War trench was to actually put people in a World War trench. So they got around and started building it out. And you can see here in this cool little video that I can't seem to play.
No, the other clip.
So you can see here they started prototyping with cardboard and actually building out a physical stage for you to walk through. But the crazy people at Flight School, no one told them not to actually build the stage. And so something you'll see here, they're through construction, they built most of it out of wood, and then it was all modular, built on these little plastic shipping crates, so they were able to just move it to the facility and set it back up. And you can see here the level of detail that they ended up imparting into the actual physical walls. They worked with a group called Bender, designed by Bender, and they were doing real-time projection mapping of the environments from the experience, right up onto the wall, and then sculpting what you would see in there. So, when you go through and you reach out and touch something, whether it's a sandbag or, a metal plank or the doors, it's actually there. The Void, who we've worked with quite a bit, they do a similar thing. If there's a lever you need to touch or someplace you need to sit, they cover that, but generally it's kind of a genericized texture because they've got 3 or 4 shows that they run, and so they can swap out a couple props and be ready to play a different show. Whereas this is a specific stage built specifically just to play this. The level of detail they went to, in that clip you could see some rats hanging. If you reach out and grab one of those rats and squeeze it, it actually has an internal bone structure. No one told them they shouldn't do this, and so they did. And the end result is it speaks for itself. The experience debuted at the Tribeca Film Festival earlier this year, and we just finished up, I think, about a month-long run in Austin, Texas, which actually went over really well. And hopefully we'll do more installations with this thing because, again, they built it modularly so they can just load it on a truck and bring it to your town if it's something that you're interested in. So yeah, the entire stage built out one-on-one. And as they were building the stage, we got involved with these guys really early. Sometimes we come in late on projects and we just kind of cram in the content that we can, but sometimes we're involved throughout the whole process. And one of the rewards on this particular experience is that we were able to suggest the floor shakers that we were so familiar with from the Void. Those bass transducers can go a long way in conveying the frequencies that we're missing from the headphones. When they came to me and said they wanted to do this experience, but they only wanted it to play in headphones because they were worried about, at Tribeca, you can't have too loud of an installation because it'll interfere with the other exhibits. I was really worried because I didn't think that we could properly convey the feeling of being in a World War trench without having subwoofers. I'm a real big proponent of pushing air. But we've had such good experience with the transducers at the Void, and if you play them right, and you play them in conjunction with what you can get into the headphones, it can often be very convincing. So sure enough, I think they bought 10 transducers and they split them up into 4 discrete zones. And so we were able, in our WISE project, we had our stereo output and then we had 4 individual outputs. And so I could route stuff directly to the floor, which made for a much more convincing experience, I think, in the end. Initially we started working on the project, and actually, as we did, early on for our first few years at Sky, we were still figuring out WISE, and so when we would stand these projects up, we would call Damien Kasbauer. And Damien would show up and, make everything wonderful. Anywhere from 3 days to a week or 2 of his time, whatever he could give us, we would greedily take. And on World War I, on the Dan Carlin project here, he came in and we spent our initial time setting up some really cool dynamic systems that were going to drive, the artillery and all the people that we hear. And there's a section where you're in a hot air balloon and you start up in the clouds, and it's it's not clear at that point that you're above a battlefield, and it sounds like thunder. And as you get closer, it slowly sort of blends into the sounds of the battlefield and the concussion of the mortars and everything. And that was a system that Damien helped us stand up early on. And so that early work helped us, it gave us sort of a robust dynamic foundation that we could then build upon as we went through, and specific animations showed up, and it was clear what the real marquee, sort of hero moments were going to be. We could make all the bespoke audio that goes with all those things, but the systems that we generated gave us such a fantastic foundation to build upon. And as a result, the final audio is chaotic in the way that I wanted it to be. It's a lot of stuff stacked up on top of each other, but I think that, if you actually were there, it would be a lot of stuff stacked up on top of each other. I think. Here's a clip. The audio here is out of sync, and not quite everything's playing. You get an idea of the level of visual fidelity that the team went for. I mean, they were definitely trying to play it as realism. So yeah, there's a lot of advantages that we have being Skywalker Sound when it comes to working on something like this. The legacy of the films that we've worked on, things like Saving Private Ryan, right? I think that's a lot of people's sort of expectation of what they think war would sound like. You know, and working at the ranch, we have direct access not just to that sound library, but to Gary Rydstrom. You know, and Gary Rydstrom, in addition to doing Private Ryan, also did War Horse a few years ago, which is actually a World War I movie, so that's even closer to the material that we needed. So, you know, we did a lot of original recording. We worked with a loop group for all of the dialogue that you hear there. That's all custom new stuff. We had a Foley team that did a bunch of mud work for us and some interesting metal work for some tank tread sort of hero moments that we had later. But again, I mean, there's something really amazing about working at that facility and having questions about some of these kind of iconic soundscapes that already, you know, like talking about Star Wars, you know, these very much exist in your consciousness, and we can just go talk to those guys and ask them how they did it, you know, and that's kind of amazing. And so it's wonderful to be able to take that and apply it to something like World War I, where it's not just a piece of entertainment, you know, that we're trying to show people so that we can make some dollars, but, you know, we're actually trying to convey some information here and give people a perception of what it was like to be in potentially, you know, one of the most horrific environments that we've created as a modern society. I'm very proud to say that what we delivered is so intense that some people immediately just nope right out. You know, before they even hit the first bunker, they've had enough. And I think in a lot of other situations, we would consider that a failure. You know, there are other VR experiences we've done that have like a point of relief right in the middle in order to prevent that exact problem. You know, if you're going to give something really intense, you've got a high chance of people wanting to get out because, you know, even the simplest VR experiences right now can be overwhelming for people. Early in the project, you know, they're all, oh, we're going to do this, we're going to do this, and then you're going to see that guy's head blow up, and this is going to happen. And, you know, they're all excited because, you know, they're breathing life into this concept. And, you know, I just sort of stopped everyone. I was like, hey, I just want to make sure we're all in agreement. We're making something absolutely shocking and terrifying, right? You know, if we want to convey Dan's vision and it's World War I, it's going to be pretty bad by the time that we're done. And everyone agreed, you know, that anything less than that sort of a reaction from our audience would be doing a disservice to the history, the conflict, and the lives lost.